Hi, friends. How's it going?
Good morning.
Uh, Good morning. How are you?
Okay, how are you?
I'm good. What's up, Wizard?
How's it going?
Good.
That background you got today is killer.
Killer. Just trying to decide, shift happens was the other one.
Oh,
Black one looks weird with my hair.
they have
I
any
like
Dallas
that
Cowboys
one.
backgrounds?
Do what?
They have any Dallas Cowboys backgrounds?
Cowboys win the Super Bowl. Uh-oh.
And it'll be over in February.
Yeah, sure. That's funny. Well, I'm super excited about this one. So today we're going to be covering pricing ahead of the market, seller pricing strategies. And it got me really thinking about what's going on in the market. And so I loved the tactic number 7 at the very beginning. It starts with the ability to learn faster than your competitors may be the only sustainable competitive advantage. Anyway, so I thought that it was really good, just kind of like reading through, okay, how do you really help people understand their own biases on what's going on in the market, and then also your bias of what's going on in the market. And so I would love to know from y'all, what are you hearing? So here's what I'd love to know. Specifically, what are you hearing from buyers or sellers? So not your interpretation of it, not how you're feeling, not how other realtors are feeling, but do you have buyers and sellers that are either waiting right now or on the fence, and what's going on? Like, what are they actually saying?
Yeah, we definitely have people waiting. And so
As far as sellers?
yeah, some people waiting to list, and maybe not even like from a fear for themselves, at least what they're saying, but more of a, we just don't think it's a good time. Obviously, people are not out looking at houses.
Okay.
It's what's coming from there.
Okay. So do you feel like the shelter at home being lifted on Friday is it that the shelter at home, or is it more of like just concerns around people's health and?
I think it's just for them, the thought of nobody's going to come look at my house.
Okay.
We're having to have that conversation around the facts of what's actually happening. And going back to, if you don't feel comfortable or it's a fear, then let's just stop right there. If you do feel comfortable, but you're just afraid nobody's going to look, let me share this data with you.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. So what data are you sharing? Just number of under contracts in the last?
Yeah, I mean, personally for our team, we've had multiple offers on, I think, like 4 out of the last 6 houses we've listed. So it's pretty easy to share that. And then the low inventory and just going through the low supply, high demand, low interest rates gives you a great chance to sell. But yeah, inventory for sure. Less competition.
Yeah. So less competition, and that the market is still moving. Like it. Okay, awesome. Anybody else have buyers or sellers that currently they're working with, and what are they saying?
Hey, Tara, it's Cammie.
Yeah.
I have one I just listed, and he said, well, let's just do it sooner than later. But I have 2 that are going to hold off till about June 1st. And just because I guess they're just waiting to see, and the shelter in place, and they just don't know if they want all those people in their houses.
Yeah. Okay. So health concerns is a little bit of it. Okay, awesome. Hey, thanks for joining, David Bott. I'd love to know from you. What are you hearing as far as buyers and sellers currently? What are they saying about looking at houses or putting their house on the market? What are you hearing from buyers and sellers right now? Are they taking action?
I just joined the meeting and you put me right on the spot.
Right on the spot.
Most of my folks are on hold right now, unless they're relocating. So I have a lot of relocations right now that are hot to trot. They want to get it done and get to Texas, and I don't blame them. I mean, you know, if I lived in Oklahoma, I'd want to get out too. You know, did you know the toothbrush was invented in Oklahoma?
The toothbrush?
Yeah, had it been invented anywhere else, it would have been called the teeth brush. But anyway, so yeah, so they're trying to get out of, you know, they're trying to relocate and do what they need to do. Otherwise, you know, I've seen significant delays in surveys lately. Appraisals going pretty fast. Surveys are moving pretty slow. And anything outside the city of Lubbock, title companies are moving, not title companies, sorry, but county records offices are moving really slow too. So, you know, that's pretty much if you're asking about impact, that's pretty much what I've seen. But buyers and sellers, you know, hit or miss. You know, I'm comparing my numbers this quarter from last quarter, and you know, there's been a significant drop in progress. So, you know, that's on my side.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for sharing.
Yes,
I'll put you on the spot again.
sir.
Well, I think a lot of this in the Shift Book Club, so I'm on page number 137 if you wanted to follow along. So on the Shift Book Club, from starting on page 137, it talks about the window of opportunity. And I think a lot of this, maybe I learned whenever I first got into the business again, because it was not a great market, but this is true of any market, is that the window of opportunity for your sellers is whenever they first hit the market. That is when the highest interest is going to be for their house. And so how can you price it competitively and strategically? And so I think that it's interesting. It keeps bringing up these two things, right? That you need to be a local market expert. So knowing what's happening locally right at the moment in your market so that you can give them pricing strategies, but then also that you know the direction that it's moving. And so today I was thinking, as we're talking about the direction that it's moving, I'd love to just mastermind with y'all around, do you feel like the direction that it's moving is going to change with the shelter at home order being lifted on Friday?
Sorry, Terry, what was the question?
So
Sorry.
the shelter at home, do you feel like it being lifted on Friday will actually start changing the direction of the market? So, hey, let me share with y'all a few numbers that these are going to be shared at team meeting too. But I feel like it's important that we're looking at the market every single week and not just in a monthly time right now. And so this is April 1st to April 25th. This is all of the Lubbock Association of Realtors. And again, it's comparing it last year versus this year. So this year we've had 450 new listings come on the market, where last year that number was 581 at the same time. So we've had 22 less houses come on the market for the month. We've had 594 sell, 827 last year. So we're 28% down on the number of sold. And I think that it's interesting, kind of what Cole was talking about earlier, is as I was reading through this chapter and it was talking about going into a buyer's market, it talks about how supply starts increasing, which means that prices have to go down and demand starts decreasing, right? So supply is going up, demand is going down, which will cause for the prices to go down. But as I was thinking about that, I thought that's not actually what's happening here. It was interesting. Wendy Papazan last week said, we have to understand that we cannot equate this market to the same market that we had in 2007, because that was a housing crash. This is not a housing crash. And I think that that's interesting to talk about with people, is that they may be thinking that this is a shifting market. And so, anyways, but really it's not a shifting market in that supply is also decreasing. So as supply decreases, even if demand decreases, that doesn't mean that the month supply of inventory is going up, which would cause a buyer's market. Anyway, so just would love your thoughts on that. That was my thought. It's also interesting that you see that the days on market is actually going down. And again, I think that this kind of points to what Cole was saying, of it doesn't matter what market you're in. If you have a house that is priced right, that is in great condition, you can get multiple offers no matter what market you're in. And so it's really the ability for the realtor to make for sure that they're pricing it correctly, convincing the seller, and then putting out a really great product, right? And then I thought it was interesting too to then just look at Keller Williams numbers in comparison to the board. So actually we've taken more listings than what we did last year at the same time. We have sold less houses, so 128 versus 154, so about 16% down, and our under contracts are about 30% down, so about 47 less houses. And again, you would see an increase in decrease in the days on market, which is really good. So as you look at those numbers, kind of tell me what y'all's thoughts are around that.
Well, the question you asked earlier on what do we think of the stay-at-home and the lift and how's that going to affect the market, I really think the next 3 to 4 weeks will be our toughest. So inventory has dropped low already. Those people that have been waiting, I think will continue to wait because they're the cautious ones. And it's not like, okay, stay-at-home's lifted. It's more they've been worried about maybe the virus. And so like wanting to make sure it's all clear. How do things go the next couple of weeks? And so I think those people waiting to list, most of them will continue to wait till about what Cammie said. You know, she's got a couple people waiting till June, kind of hearing the same thing. Like, we'd like to wait till like more in the summer for those people. So, which means if inventory is low and a lot of the great listings that were out there have sold and the other great listings are waiting, it's going to get harder for our buyers. And so I think the next 3 to 4 weeks will be the most trying to get some stuff under contract. And then, you know, June, July, I think it opens up to be great.
Yeah. Interesting.
Doesn't matter much, just my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that, you know, I've heard the thought a lot from top agents. I have sellers that are saying, I'm going to wait until this is over. And it's like, okay, what's over, right? Like that's the interpretation that I'm like, okay, is over the shelter at home being lifted, is over the economy starting back up, but the economy's not going to start back up like immediately, right? So like what is over to people, you know? 'Cause I
Zero
think
new
that
cases. Zero. Just kidding.
Anyways, but I think that it leads to an interesting conversation, which I would also say is probably what's important right now is to just ask the question, like, hey, whenever you say you would like for it to come back, what does that mean for you, right? Because I think it's narrowing that down. Is it the health concerns? Is it the economic concerns? Is it their job? They're concerned about their job, right? Or are they concerned about the market? Because those are all for way different objections than just having the idea of, I'm going to wait. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the challenge in asking those questions? Any other thoughts?
My people's concerns are jobs.
Jobs.
Mm-hmm. They just want to sit still and ride the storm out, and they will talk and discuss fourth quarter.
Okay. And are these buyers or sellers?
Both.
Both. Okay.
You know, I think the question I'm having the most right now is, you know, there's people that are acting with emotion and people that want facts. And so starting with the emotion, and I've used this, just talked through several people, is like, hey, have you gone to the grocery store? Yeah, a couple times. It's like, okay, well, there's probably been a couple thousand people through that store in a day, and you're probably in there with 200 other people at a time. Would you be okay if a couple people came through your house a day or 10 people in a week? If you go expose yourself to 2,000 people, are you okay with 2 people coming through your door? And you get to control your house and if it's clean and wipe it down. And can you keep your 2,000 square feet disinfected better than the grocery store can keep their 40,000 feet disinfected? You know, and just seeing where they go there. And if it's I wouldn't mind 2 people, you know, coming through my house per week. Or if you put it that way, it's like, okay, we're getting past the emotional part. We can then talk the numbers and the facts of, okay, here's what's going on with the housing market. If you can't get past the emotional part, they're never going to listen to the numbers. So you just got to stop and say, okay, at what point, like you asked earlier, will this be over for you or would you feel comfortable? And I think once you hit that timeline, we're checking in. But yeah, hit the emotion first. If you can't get past that, they're not going to listen to the numbers.
Yeah. It's really great. Thanks for using that analogy. And I also think that just even asking, you know, like what could we do in order to protect? Because a lot of times with health concerns, if they don't know that you're doing anything, right, but having hand sanitizer, having Clorox wipes, opening up all the doors, turning on all of the lights, like making for sure that there's less contact that people are having is so important. So, yeah. Great. Any other thoughts? Okay, well, I think more than ever too, as we're talking about like what's going on in the market right now, it's so important to say you've got to be ahead of the media. And he said this again in the book, but he said, as soon as the media comes out and say it's the buyer's market, it's over. Consumer confidence, all of the stuff is down, right? And so how do you be in front of the media? And again, going back to like what Wendy Papasan was talking about last week, I asked her the question, you know, we keep hearing this and I keep saying it, double down on lead generation. And I said, like, what does that actually mean to you? And she said, well, whenever we were saying, okay, we're going to send out one newsletter a month, now we're sending out two newsletters a month. If we were calling them our database one time a quarter, now we're calling them 2 times a quarter. Like, they're going to have to hear from you more often than what they used to hear from you. And especially if you want to stay in front of the media, right? Which I would say, man, it's so important right now to stay in front of the media. The thing that they can't do is ask these great questions, right? Hey, tell me about the difference between the grocery store and putting your house on the market, right? Like, those are the questions that need to be asked so that they can actually think through all of these things. So how are you doing that? What are y'all doing? What are you seeing successful in doubling down on lead generation with people and staying in front of the media?
Well, the challenge of staying in front of the media is creating the media. So it's something we talk about at KW a lot, which is, trying to get on that Facebook Live stuff. I've got my big push right now, starting last week, creating as much media as I possibly can now to get out there on the web. As you can see, I've got my podcast stuff set up in the background, so I've been doing as much blogging to initiate blogging, lately, and get some web video out there. So yeah, it's turning out to be a much bigger challenge, because meeting that mass internet audience in order to capture those leads has turned into the big challenge. And personally for myself, I think, well, Terry and I talked about this last Monday. I had been postponing doing a lot of things that I'm really being forced to do now, and hopefully I'll reap the benefits of it. But we're kind of jumping out of this, phase with the COVID thing, and we'll see what happens. Either way, the work that I've been doing throughout this session for myself, I'm hoping will predict the future market rather than be a reaction to the current market. So, but customer awareness, yep.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. I think that is the hardest thing, at least for me, is the consistency over intensity, right? I can be intense sometimes. I think that Cole shared that last year, but like been a challenge that I've had to accept for myself. I can really be intense sometimes, but the consistency of it, because here's the truth, is the media is so consistent, right? Like, they're going to get a new story literally every single day, right? And so how are you staying in front of that is like, man, it's got to be so stinking consistent, which is the thing that I definitely struggle with. So. Any other thoughts?
Hey, Tara, this is Russ.
Yeah.
I've been trying to just call the agents lately and just stay in front of them a little bit and just let them know, we've actually leased more properties this April than we did last April last year. And so, I'm here in my office. My wife kicked me out of the kitchen, and you know, it's just amazing how people are still showing up, and we're doing more virtual tours and self-showing options. And, you know, it's just, you know, I am talking to investors, and some of them are like a little worried because you can't evict people. And yet, you know, the reality is that currently not many people are making extra payment arrangements in a normal month. It may change in May. I'm not sure I know that. But, and so, I mean, don't get me wrong. I definitely talked to some investors, and they kind of said, "Hey, we're going to wait 2 months." Is usually the answer I get. But I also have some that are going under contract, and so anyway, that's just kind of some ways I'm trying to just be proactive and let them know how we're handling stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome, Russ. Thanks for sharing. It's interesting. And I would also say y'all did an awesome job of Cricket having somebody interview her and just ask questions and putting out that video to all of your database. And it was just questions that everybody was kind of wondering, right? As like, hey, what do y'all see the future of? How are you going to show properties? Are y'all still working? Right? Anyway, so she answered all of those, and I watched the whole video and thought it was just super informative. So that's a great way too.
I'll let her know. Thank you.
Yeah. Miranda, what about you? Y'all done a great job at Joy keeping in front of the media. What do you feel like has been the most effective for y'all?
I think I was just thinking like this last week I've been kind of feeling like what is our value? What is the message I want to send the public at the beginning? I think it was so important to get in front of the media. I think we did a really good job with that, putting stuff of value on social media, letting them know the kind of closings we're going to be able to do. And then we've been told, and I don't think it's 100% true because I think other title companies are adjusting as well. But for a while, it was like, man, you're one of the only companies doing this, and this is great. And so that felt like really good. I think, just if I'm being 100% honest, I'm having a little struggle of figuring out, I'm at home, just figuring out maybe like what my purpose is on, what do I do now, kind of like this middle part is a little bit hard. And I think what you said at the beginning of, is this ever really going to be over? I mean, I don't think it is. I think this is a new way of doing business. And so I'm kind of at a place of marketing, like what is the message we're sending to our clients instead of, triage mode, trying to get everything out there. Now it's like, what is our value to our customers, and how can we possibly change the title industry forever? Because the title industry is really behind. And so this is forcing the legislation and everything to make decisions that I feel like needed to be done a long time ago, but they're changing all the time. So we're trying to stay on top of it, but without oversaturating like social media with just, things that aren't of value. I don't know. I'm struggling a little bit with that because we don't exactly know where it's going to go. And so, I don't know. I think I've been in a little bit of a rut this last week.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being honest. And also I would say, man, I think that y'all did a great job of just social media. And it is interesting how many times you have to say something before people get it. And I think, again, going back to like, as you were talking, it was like, oh man, my consistency, I want there to be a new message or a new thing, right? And sometimes it's the consistency of saying the exact same thing that is important, right? Because it is interesting. Yeah, I think title companies were all still operating, but y'all are being the loudest about, hey, we're still operating, right? And so that's so important, is just the consistency of your messaging and not getting tired of saying, hey, this is it, this is it, this is it, this is it. And then, yeah, I would also say, if y'all have not listened, Jay Papasan and Gary Keller, Jason Abrams, and Monica Reynolds are going to go live Friday at 3 o'clock, every Friday at 3 o'clock for right now. And it's called Life, L-Y-F-E, Live Your Future. That doesn't make sense. Anyways, it was interesting because he was talking about how this has forced a lot of companies to rethink even what they knew was probably coming down the pipeline, but like it forced them to do it. And that Gary Keller was talking about, will retail companies actually ever go back to the way that they did business? And if they did, that was already dying before this even happened, right? And so how crazy that would be to go back to the way that they were doing business if it was already going down, right? And I just thought about that for the real estate industry of what are changes that we've seen that have been really good that we don't need to go away from. And so, yeah, I would say, I think keep pushing forward, Miranda, being on the cutting edge of how to
Well,
change
and I
the
think,
title industry.
well, thank you. And I think for just during this whole process, I do have my house on the market. And, you know, before all this hit, had a contract on it the first week, but that was listed, but it was a contingency. And then we were still having a lot of showings. And so I've seen what it's done to the real estate industry as a seller. And then buying a new home, we got in contract on a new home, like right before everybody basically was in lockdown. So I've kind of seen how it's affected me in those ways too. And it's just interesting to see the way just being, I mean, I've dealt obviously with Stacey Rogers and her team on the title side, but seeing the way they've handled this part of the business has been really interesting and been great. You know, just the little things they've done, and Stacey dropping off a box to have the booties and gloves and things for people to come through the house. And so just those little extra steps have made a big difference. And Tracy meeting me out, she was my buyer's agent, so like having her gloves on and having all the lights on so that we wouldn't have to touch things, and getting there early and having hand sanitizer. And so it's been kind of crazy to see it from all angles and how it's affected the lending side, working with our lender. And there's some talk about self-employed people, how it's going to affect them. So it's been really kind of seeing all of the ins and out of it. I don't really have a point other than I've kind of gotten to see every aspect of the real estate world, I guess, in this last month and a half.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, even I think that you kind of answered your own question then, because I do think a lot of times it's like, how are we reacting to this, right? And even with Keller Williams, I don't think that right now they can over communicate. Like, it's like, I'm actually reading all of the emails that they send, where in the past it's not been the case, right? But I'm really interested to know from day to day it can change. And so knowing like, okay, what's going on right now, but even what you said, right? Like that Stacey's team is over communicating, they're providing, they're being safe, they're providing stuff to make for sure that you're safe. Awesome. So good. Well, I also loved on page number 156, I think that it's a really good summary of the whole chapter. And it goes over the 7 maxims for pricing in a shifting market. And number 1, I think this is so true all the time, is be a student of the numbers. You've got to be the market expert. And now more than ever, it is like at a premium for you to be the market expert. And I think that the truth is a lot of people want to come in and just immediately be that market expert, and they're not. And it's because it takes time. Like, you can't do that overnight. So not getting frustrated, but just saying, I'm going to commit to a consistent action of what's going on, right? Number 2 is focus your main comps on actives, which I think is really interesting. And I would love your thoughts on this. Whenever I was pricing houses, it would mainly be focusing them on actives was, okay, this is what's happening, but they're sitting on the market. Under contracts is, hey, this is actually what people are agreeing that they will even write a contract on. And then sold, we're actually, okay, this is the pulse of the market right now. So would love to know, what do you use the main ones? What are you looking at right now in this market? Active, under contracts, or sold?
I think you touched on something earlier that, again, the book Shift was written for the 07, 08, and this is not a housing crisis. And when we talk about houses that are still being listed that have multiple offers, I think we're still primarily needing to look at solds as opposed to actives. And I think maybe more importantly, actives see competition currently, but with inventory so low, I'm still looking at solds, and then there's not much competition out there. So I'm not changing that much right now, as if this was a housing crisis.
Yeah.
But it is interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, kind of reading it and not wanting to contradict the book because I know they're smarter than I am. And at the same time, like really just realizing this is different. It's not, it's not a housing crisis. I think that's like the main message. And the main message that, man, if I needed to hear it from Wendy Papasan, then it kind of made me change my thinking. Like, oh man, everybody needs to hear that. This is not a housing crisis. So, yeah. Number 3, I think that this is interesting to be a student of the property, preview them so that you understand what is selling and why. And as we're not doing, tours, not able to do that, I think that it's still so important to know what actually are home buyers interested in, like what is getting the multiple offers. So what have y'all seen? What are things that actually attract buyers? Is it a price range? Is it the look of the house? Like what's actually hot right now?
Everybody's looking for the deal. All the buyers I talk to are thinking that every seller is so desperate that they're just gonna, do 6% and seller paid concessions on an FHA loan. And, it's just like, I've had to have so many talks with clients going, I'm absolutely more than willing to communicate any offer that you desire for me to communicate, but I found myself in more hard negotiations recently on the buy side as a result of the current market. So everybody's just, seems to really be looking to scrape away as much as they can. That's been the challenge for me. Is I've had a lot of negotiations lose out in multiple offer situations because most of my buyer clients think that sellers are desperate right now. It's interesting. So
Yeah, man, it's so interesting, David. And I was wondering that, like, are buyers kind of sitting on the fence saying, hey, I'm going to wait because I feel like there will be better deals later on. And yeah, just like going back to, hey, here's what's happened, and using past experiences to hopefully move forward other buyers, right? Where you could say, hey, I've had buyers in that situation that have lost out on houses because they thought that we were in a different market than what we are, right? So it's interesting. Any other thoughts on what's happening right now, what's moving quickly?
I think for me, it's been anywhere from 120 to 175. That's like updated. Everybody's kind of thinking is like, this is pretty cute. It's got newer flooring, new paint. I mean, I feel like even the little things like the lipsticks on the house are appealing to people now more than ever in that price point, and that's where we're seeing like 6-7 offers per house, especially in that 130 to 160 range. I would say is the hottest that I've personally seen. And I think too, I agree with David, and especially on investors. Like I'm seeing a lot of investors saying like, let's push the brakes on this a little bit and wait to see what happens. I don't want to buy anything yet because I think the bottom is coming. And so it's kind of interesting to see how it's going to play out in the next few weeks and months.
So interesting. Hey, Ruben, on that, even whenever you're seeing multiple offers in that price range, usually it was, first-time home buyers or, people that wanted to live in the house competing with investors in that price point. Have you seen the investors drop off, that they're competing with other people that are going to live in the house?
That's kind of what I've noticed or I've experienced. Not to say that that's not the case across the board, but it seems to me like these are a lot of first-time home buyers out looking right now. And two, the people that need to, I don't know if everybody's taking advantage of low interest rates while they're still low, even though FHA is kind of all over the place. But it seems like the people who are looking right now are the ones that need to buy. You know, it's not the ones that are just like browsing just for the sake of being able to look at a house and maybe sometime in the future I'll buy. It's generally I'm out looking and I'm going to buy in the next month to 2 months. And so, and I think that's a lot of why we have the multiple offers is everybody that's looking right now is super serious. And I don't know, I'm not sure about the investor question exactly, but in my experience, I think it's a lot of first time home buyers.
Yes. So interesting. Well, I wanted to show y'all. Oh, Cole, you had something?
Yeah, I was gonna say you asked about different homes and what's selling. You know, we had one house that had 11 offers, and it was very different tastes, like the concrete floors, modern, and it was kind of like eye-opening to see. Okay, Lubbock is thirsting for something different, and you may get it in some higher price points, but when you're under 200,000 and there's something very modern and different, it's like, man, it's pretty eye-opening that there's that many people out there that were willing to make offers above asking price. And then the other thing is, you know, Altos Research, they do some real-time stuff as opposed to a lot of other companies that look at data and it might be like a month or two behind. So if you check out Altos Research, you know, according to them on April 27th, they're saying that, you know, median home prices have gotten to the highest point of the year. And so that was as of a couple of days ago. So again, it's just talking about when you have low supply, high demand, it doesn't matter what else is going on, prices are going to go up. So again, I think that goes back to looking at solds as opposed to actives currently.
Yeah, that's so good. So Altos Research, ALTOS. Awesome. Do you have to pay for that subscription? You're on mute.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so there's this guy named Mike Simonson, and they just put out these reports on YouTube that are free. Yep. So you may check that out.
Good. Awesome. Mike Simonson. Okay, awesome. Okay, so great. Yeah, so as we were talking, again, it just goes back to be a student of property. You got to know what is answering buyers' appetite right now, right? It would just be like if you owned a grocery store, you would know that toilet paper is in need and you would increase your buying of that, right? It's the same thing for real estate. Like you have to be a student of the market and actually know what are buyers wanting right now. Because again, that helps you not just know the numbers, but you need to know the demand, like what's the demand that buyers are wanting. And then going back to Cole's point, I would say, again, more than ever, I would say price, yes, and condition. Like the condition has to be really good too. And so how can you get people ready to really take advantage of the first of the market and having that great condition? So the other one is keep your presentation as current as possible. Let your ongoing research do the talking. And again, having a presentation that can answer current market questions, right? Pre-qualify for motivation. Sellers who need to sell most often. Love that one. Price ahead of the market and always secure price reductions in advance. So the last thing that I thought would be interesting to just kind of mastermind and cover was to take or not to take an overpriced listing. So would love to know what's y'all's thoughts. Should you take an overpriced listing or should you not? Or at what point do you take a listing or not? So
I'm going to take it.
You're going to take it.
I'm going to take it, Tara.
Awesome. At any price.
Yes.
Okay. So
Here's
you want
my
the
strategy.
marketing opportunity. Yes.
Yes,
me.
you caught me. You busted me. That's it. Because one, I'm going to have the conversation. I'm going to project the behavior to a price reduction if or when, and then I'm going to use it as a marketing opportunity to capture and convert leads. It's a risk, but I'm taking
Yep.
it.
Yep. Well, it's interesting. I think it's a great debate. I mean, I think you could be on either side of this coin, but I think it's important that you think about it, right? Is at what point is it worth it for you to take any listing and to have the buyer or marketing opportunities? So, any other thoughts? Russ, what's y'all's thoughts on taking overpriced leases?
I take them. I mean, I'd be honest, sometimes the owners might know better than we do. Sometimes they do the research and lived in the house. And so I always do the price reduction strategy, though, with them. I like that. And so I just say, hey, we may touch base every week or two, and we may have to lower it depending on how much it's overpriced. If it's, $50, $75. And so I don't mind taking them.
Yeah, I'll go from the other side is, I had a listing not long ago that I thought it was not priced too high, maybe $5,000 to $10,000 too high. Thought, okay, at $170,000, that's not too bad. But when you have a price combined with they won't get it in the right condition, all of a sudden you have a problem where we're setting a record for amount of showings. We have 40 showings and I don't remember in 2 weeks or something, and I'm taking a lot of phone calls, a lot of texts, a lot of questions, agents. There's problems with showings, there's dogs, there's all kinds of stuff that I feel like all day long you're dealing with stuff that spent so much time on that listing to then get an offer and not work out, and you negotiated a whole thing through a weekend, and then later you have to get back under contract. And it's like, man, how much energy, time, the pictures weren't great, right? House didn't look great. And it's like, that's all part of our branding and what we take. So with listings, sometimes it may be a little overpriced. That's okay if the condition is there and the effort is there from the seller. If you don't have the effort from the seller and the condition and they want to overprice it, and I'm holding very strong. This was like a sphere listing, so it got a little bit different. But the people that are not willing to listen to you on condition and they're not willing to listen to you on price are also going to be the people that don't listen to you when it comes to negotiation, that don't listen to you when it comes to a low appraisal. And it ends up being so much time and headache, and then you're battling your own client. So anyway, I think if one or the other, if condition is down but price is great, okay. If price is a little high but they got great condition, okay. But if you got both, I'm holding steady until they say, okay, we're going to go with your suggestion, or hey, we found another realtor. And at that point, I have to say, okay.
Yeah. Great thoughts. Yeah, because I would always say there's probably a caveat to every single one of these that you would say, right? And one of the things, though, that I had to get really good at, about 3 years in, I had a few listings that were just not selling, and went into Debbie Frapp's office and was like, okay, I don't know if I want to take listings anymore because this is not fun. I don't like when they don't sell, right? And she said, okay, convince me that you have them priced right. And it was like, right? Like, the truth is, I wasn't going into the listing convinced of what they should be priced at. And so I just had a thing that, okay, this is the price that they're gonna list at. And if it is 10% over or more, I'm not gonna take the listing, right? And it gave me, what I realized is that whenever I was more convinced, I was able to convince more people. If I was not convinced of it, I was not able to convince that person, right? And so I think that that's the important thing here. And even what Gary Keller would go back to all of the time is that if you're not the market expert, the truth is you're not going to be able to fake it. Like that is not a fake it till you make it kind of conversation, right? Like you actually need to get in and do the research, take the time, and be convinced yourself, right? Because I would also say there's also people that are known for, man, they take really great listings and they are convinced of what that listing needs to look like before it's put on the market. And so they go in with this confidence that people just buy into, right? And so it's not so much that they're just better at negotiations. It's that they've convinced themselves actually what sells homes. And so I would say more than anything, you need to be convinced of the price and the condition that it's going to take. And then kind of have your thresholds of, okay, if this happens in the meeting, if they go up to this number, then I won't take the listing, or I will take the listing, right? So, but I would say most of all, can take some work on your side of things before you go into the appointment. Any other closing thoughts on that? Okay, awesome. Well, in closing, I think that the most important thing that I hope that you heard is, A, this is not a housing crisis. And then B, it is, you need to be the local market expert. So that is knowing the numbers, yes. But also to go back to page number 156, I think that you need to be a student of what's actually selling, right? You own a business just like United owns the business. And so you get to be all of the positions. And one of those positions is ordering, right? Like, what are you ordering? What are you ordering for buyers right now? So, okay, awesome. Hey, thanks for being on. We look forward to seeing you at team meetings. Let us know if you need anything. Okay, see ya.
Thank you.